Mishcon Academy digital sessions.
Welcome everyone to this Mishcon Academy digital series event. Hello and welcome to wonderful Ed. You have got an incredible CV, writer, broadcaster, lecturer, obviously ex-politician, and most importantly, the first winner of Best Home Cook. So congratulations for that.
Thank you very much indeed.
This is a really wonderful book, and I'm not just saying that because you're sat in front of me today. I absolutely loved it. So how did this happen?
Well, I mean, as you said, it was partly because of Best Home Cook. I was supposed to be going out to America last summer to film a second Trumpland series, and then, of course, the pandemic stopped that happening.
Yep.
And then I suddenly had the opportunity, quite late. They said, do you fancy doing a month in a kitchen with Mary Berry? Okay. Best Home Cook. A couple of years before, I'd made a recipe book, but kind of slightly surprisingly, there's only 2 copies of this recipe book. My daughter, when she was 18, and we said to her, what would you like for your 18th birthday? Thinking, it was hard to choose. And she said what she'd like is a collection of all the recipes that I'd cooked in the first 18 years of her life, so that she could take them out into the university and into the world. And so on Best Home Cook, those were the recipes I used in the show. And we thought that actually, when I look back through my life, generally everything was food related. Mm-hmm. And if you thought of the recipes which then took you to different experiences, and maybe that would strike a chord with people. So that's how the idea came about. 34 recipes and lots of stories.
I was absolutely fascinated to hear that your first experience of food...
I know, don't copy this.
...was at a very young age. Can you tell us a little about this?
I was born in 1967, and I think I was 10 pound 2 ounces, so I was kind of quite a big baby. And the health visitor came to visit, as they do in the first couple of weeks. And when she came the third time, when I was 3 weeks old, she said, milk's not enough for him. She said, he's growing, he needs more than that. She said, put him on solids.
What?
So I was 3 weeks old when I had my first roast dinner, and I never looked back.
So let's talk about that first food memory. What was that?
My brother went through this phase when he was very little, of we'd get home from the supermarket and things would be in the basket which nobody could remember purchasing. One time when we came home and there was this chili con carne spice. And so my mum put it in the shepherd's pie.
And that's how you made your chili?
And it was a chili con carne shepherd's pie. And I mean, we're talking about 1979. This was revolutionary. I mean, my mum and dad never ate spicy food. And my mum only used half the sachet because didn't want to overdo it. But actually, it was really nice. Back then, the range of ingredients which were around and which people used was much narrower.
There's a point in the book where you talk about your first experience going to a restaurant, which I absolutely love. Can you share with us what that was like?
In the 70s, early 80s, people didn't go to restaurants. There were very few restaurants outside of the big centre of the cities. Yeah. And so we other than fish and chips, we never ever went to a restaurant. And then this moment occurred when I was about 11, I think 11 or 12. My mum said that we should try going to a restaurant. We went to the Shard in Tollerton. It was Sunday lunch, and so you had a choice of like pork or beef, and then vegetables and terrines. But the starter is what I remember. And the starter choice was tomato soup, prawn cocktail, or freshly squeezed orange juice.
What?
And, my mum made tomato soup. And, the general view in our family was we didn't eat prawns.
Okay,
As I said, they were quite small C conservative eaters at the time. So all 5 of us, we chose the orange juice. And it all arrived in this glass on a doily with a napkin. And we all sat there around the table and drank this orange juice. And it was incredibly exciting. I mean, it was the most special thing.
So when were you let loose in the kitchen? When did you find that independence to sort of start experimenting?
I did my Cub Scout and my Scouts cook badge.
Okay.
And I was the person who my mum, partly because of that, she taught me to cook. My brother became a vegetarian aged 10. He passed out in a butcher's, which was like a disaster in our family because my mum's dad was a butcher, and we never ever had fish in our house. We only had meat. It was a very meat house. And then my sister didn't really eat much at all. She didn't like food really. Okay. So I was the one. If it was obviously all the cooking genes went to me, and then I started cooking stuff to help her. I did my Scouts badge, and I never looked back, really.
And you still retain that position in the family as head chef for bigger, broader sort of family gatherings.
So first of all, in our family, the reason I did it was not necessarily by choice. Yvette did quite a bit of cooking when we were first together. The first time I went down to meet Yvette's mum, I was probably about 26, and Yvette says to me, my mum is cooking you it was like a chicken curry. And apparently I was supposed to kind of be very impressed by this, but I thought, well, that's great, but, And she said, I don't think you understand, but she's coming out of retirement. And it turned out that Yvette's mum, when her youngest child left home, basically said, I've done this for 21 years.
I've had enough.
I've had enough. And she totally retired and said, I'm not going to cook anymore. And her dad had to take over. Anyway, I should have seen the writing on the wall. Because what was I doing? Because when, Yvette when our first child was born, she gave up. Yvette has not cooked for 21 years. She basically said, I've got enough on. And so it was partly survival, if I'm honest with you. But also, then it became a thing I enjoyed. And then my mum has dementia and has had it for 15 years. So I ended up having to take over the cooking for our broader family as well. So there's a sort of life cycle in this. My mum taught me to cook, and now I cook for her when we go to visit.
So let's fast forward a few years to when you sort of reach the Westminster crowd. There's a brilliant story about lunch at Mandelson's, and obviously the very famous meal at Granita between Gordon and Tony. Can you share us with a little bit of insight into those situations?
The Granita dinner was, John Smith had died.
Yep.
It was clear that Tony Blair was going to be the person, rather than Gordon Brown, to be the next leader of the Labour Party. But this was all kind of quite traumatic, and there was a moment where this had to be kind of finally kind of sealed. It was kind of decided, but the moment was to be the two of them going out for a meal, because it's over food that you would bless this moment. Yeah. And they chose a restaurant off Upper Street.
That's crazy, isn't it?
On Upper Street, called Granita, like a shishi Mediterranean restaurant. It was Tony Blair's choice. Gordon Brown, never been in such a restaurant before, and he obviously wasn't he didn't really want to be there for a number of reasons, both the event and the place. And so he said to me, you'll have to come too. Well, we go in and we look. The first thing I remember him saying is he looked at the menu and said, "What exactly is polenta?" And I'm not sure I knew. And so that was where they decided their agreement about their partnership.
Amazing.
It wasn't really about the food.
No. You mentioned you meet Yvette, your relationship evolves, you then start to think about a family, and she hangs up the cooking.
She only does it after 9 months, where you have to navigate through all these different food choices.
Yeah.
But Yvette's turned out to be chocolate mousse. But she also didn't think she could have chocolate mousse because of raw eggs.
Yeah.
And so I decided I had to go and solve this. So I went off searching for recipes and found this recipe for a chocolate mousse which is baked in the oven. I can see you're holding one.
I followed your recipe.
Did you?
I followed your recipe exactly. And I thought, well, the man who's been critiqued by Mary Berry maybe can critique my chocolate mousse.
Gosh. Oh, look at that. I mean, it looks great.
Okay.
And it needs to cool and chill,
yeah,
which is what you've done.
Yeah, yeah.
And what you want is for it to be, not to be lumpy, but to be really smooth.
Oh, for the pressure.
Which is, look at that.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
I'm sorry I can't share with everyone, but I think health and safety.
I'm going to show you. So do you see that? I mean, it's sort of, in a different world, it could be a duck liver pate, but it's not.
I did say to you, before you put in the raw egg, it is delicious just as a hot chocolate.
It's really, really good.
Thank you. All right, that's good.
It's such a good mousse.
Delighted that you're eating it. Please don't be polite and finish it.
It's really good.
So life as a family in politics, you and Yvette were the first couple appointed to the cabinet. What challenges and the jobs that you were running, what challenges did that present for you both?
We had 3 kids under 9 at the time. Things were always going wrong, but we sort of managed our way through it. Gordon Brown moved the start of the cabinet to 9 a.m, which was incredibly unfamily friendly. And we always kind of ended up just going in almost just in time, looking quite windswept, but having got the kids pretty much ready to go. It was also hard, if I'm honest with you, because people thought it was weird. The kind of public reaction was not positive, and it was worse for her.
Yeah.
The judgment of Yvette was harsher than the judgment of me. In public life, I think you're really wise to work very hard to protect your children. And I was the children's minister.
Of course.
But there are no pictures anywhere of me and Yvette with our children. They never came to any events. We'd never talk about their names.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about being children's minister. So it's the first time, wasn't it, that schools and children's policy was brought together.
That's right.
And you share in the book that actually in your first week in the job, you took a trip to a secondary school that kind of spawned a whole range of different ideas around tackling child food poverty.
But I had said to the leader of the Head Teachers Association that I wanted to go and spend a day in a school which was dealing well with challenge, and to talk to the head teacher and the staff and find out what it was which really worked for the school. She said they had loads of kids who arrive at 11 identified as having problems with behaviour. And so it was that sort of intervention, understanding the non-learning barriers to learning. The evidence was the consistency of eating made quite a difference to concentration and attainment. What we were doing in that department, we had joint responsibility for youth justice, for children's play, children's health, all these different things, and we were trying to look at all of the non-classroom barriers to learning and attainment.
Right.
And children are only at school 15% of the time, so the other 85% of the time has a big impact upon a child's ability to do well or not. And we were trying to, and some of those things came down to food.
If we fast forward to present day, or what we've been seeing play out in the last 19, 20 months, and obviously the work that Marcus Rashford has been doing, and he collected an honorary degree last week, and he said it was bittersweet. I don't know if you saw his comments collecting that, because he said obviously just the day before the universal credit uplift had been withdrawn. Where do you think we are on that?
In the last year and a half, because of the way in which education was so disrupted, there would have been some children who carried on learning as effectively as before. And there's some children who, at the other end of the spectrum, without decent internet connection, without enough rooms, without kind of the cajoling of school, will not have been learning very much at all.
Yeah.
And that kind of widening of outcomes, I mean, will last forever unless we do something about that.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think the Marcus Rashford stuff about school food is a really good but small example of the bigger problem. I feel as though our collective mindset from the government down to many of us is that's done, let's just go back to normal. But actually, the long-term impact educationally of the last 18 months for some children is very, very severe. And I'm not sure there's really a plan yet to do anything about that.
No,
but that feels like a bad thing.
It does, absolutely, absolutely. If we could just move again, whistle-stop tour towards the end of your career, and life in politics comes to an end. Of all of your conquests since leaving politics, which is the thing that you're most proud of?
I've managed to keep my midlife crisis going for at least 12 years now. And I think to do that successfully, you have to not be too worried about being bad at things. And obviously, I took the same approach into Strictly.
Oh, absolutely, we've got to talk about that.
My mum, every time, she often, most weeks she will see on YouTube Gangnam Style, and she sees it every time for the first time, and she rolls her eyes, and inside she's thinking, do I recognise him? What's he doing?
Aww.
But Katya and I get messages all the time from people saying, if I get a bit low,
you put it on.
I watch Gangnam Style, it cheers me up. We just have, in a couple of weeks' time, a documentary about social care, the stories of staff and people and the challenge of care. And it changes, when you see the films, I mean, like for me doing them, it changes your whole view about what social care is and how hard it is. And in a way, that's a fun but quite purposeful thing to do. So I probably get more satisfaction from doing those things than I do from my tango.
Ed, we've come to the end of our time, which is so sad. I feel like I had a stack load of other questions to ask you, but thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. So if you could just join me in thanking Ed.
And to everybody online, thank you.
the Mishcon Academy digital sessions. To access advice for businesses that is regularly updated, please visit mishcon.com.